So what triggers attraction inside of women? Well, I can tell you as someone who doesn't have the sort of appearance that makes women say wow, and who also has friends who are handsome, that a woman's attraction can be triggered by a man looking handsome, by his physical appearance. But I can also tell you as someone who was with a lot of pretty women, a lot of beautiful women before settling down, that a woman's attraction can be triggered to non-physical traits. A woman can look at a guy and not find him physically attractive, but if he displays the traits that I'm going to talk about in this video, she then sees him as not only attractive emotionally and non-physically, but she actually starts to look at his physical appearance in a more positive light. She actually starts to find him more physically attractive because of the non-physical attraction that she is feeling. And this is something that has been proven by multiple studies. And what I discovered is that if you want to trigger attraction inside of women, you essentially need to display non-physical traits that either suggest that you are emotionally strong or emotionally intelligent. So with the first example, confidence versus insecurity. So confidence is the attractive non-physical trait that suggests emotional strength, whereas insecurity suggests emotional weakness. And women are attracted to emotional strength and they're turned off by emotional weakness. The next one is flirting versus neutral. And flirting takes some emotional intelligence to understand how to communicate in that way to a woman, right? So flirting is essentially where you show a woman that you have a sexual or romantic interest in her, but you're only doing it in a playful way. It's not done in a serious way where you're telling her that you want to have sex with her, you really like her, you want to get into a relationship with her. Instead, you're just playfully hinting at that. And it takes emotional intelligence to be able to do that. Whereas if a guy is just being neutral with a woman, it doesn't necessarily mean that he isn't emotionally intelligent, but if he's not displaying the trait of flirting, then the problem with that is that if they get into a relationship and he doesn't know how to flirt with her, right? Flirting creates sexual tension between you and a woman. If he doesn't know how to do that and he's just going to be neutral and plain and basic when interacting with her, then it's a possibility that the spark is going to die in the relationship because he's not going to know how to create that when he's interacting with her. For the guy, it doesn't really matter though, right? He looks at the woman, he finds her attractive, he wants to have sex with her, he wants to have a relationship with her. If it lasts for 3 months or 3 years, who cares? He wants to get with her in most cases. Sometimes a guy will be looking at a woman and he'll be thinking marriage, lifetime, I want to be with her for life. But for most guys, when they look at a woman that they find attractive, if it doesn't work out after 3 months, but they've been having sex and they had a great time together, fine, no problem. But for a woman, she doesn't want to get herself into that type of situation where, for example, she gets into a relationship with a guy who doesn't even know how to flirt with her and create that sexual tension between them. And he's enjoying being with her, but she's not feeling any sexual tension, right? It seems a little bit boring and flat and neutral for her because he doesn't know how to communicate in that way. And from the guy's perspective, he doesn't really care, because a guy doesn't really need that from a woman in order to want to have sex with her. If he's in his 20s or 30s or even in his 40s, he's pretty much going to be open to having sex every day. He's going to have that desire to have sex with her, and he doesn't need her to flirt with him in order to want to have sex with her. But for women, they do need guys to be able to turn them on, because most women have what's called responsive desire, meaning that they don't regularly have a spontaneous urge and desire just to have sex for the sake of it. Instead, the guy actually needs to be able to create that sexual tension and desire, or in other words, turn her on, make her want it. He's got to be able to flick that switch inside of her rather than just talking to her in a neutral way and expecting that she's going to behave like a man, where she'll just want to have sex for the sake of it. Now, of course, at the start of a relationship, sometimes a woman will want to do that because it's new, she's feeling that new lust, and she'll want to have sex just for the sake of it. But as the relationship continues, the guy needs to know how to get her in the mood, how to flick that switch on inside of her by flirting with her and creating some sexual tension. Otherwise, she just won't want to have sex as much as he does, and then he'll start thinking that she doesn't want it, she doesn't want him, and he might start complaining to her, he might start pleading for sex, or he might start getting into arguments and saying, you're my girlfriend, why are you being like this, and so on. And he doesn't know how to flick that switch on inside of her. So if you're interacting with a woman and you're able to flirt with her, it demonstrates emotional intelligence, and it also lets her see that if she got into a relationship with you, then you would most likely be the sort of guy who is able to keep the spark alive, and therefore a relationship would last longer, if not for life. Another trait that triggers attraction inside of women is being assertive versus being passive, right? So Generally speaking, when it comes to dating and even relationships, women are passive. And even when it comes to sex as well, if a woman has responsive desire, in that she's essentially waiting to react to you, right? She's waiting to follow your lead. This is why women will stand around at a bar or party and wait for a man to walk over and start a conversation with them. This is why a man will lead the dance when dancing with a woman. This is why a man will ask for a woman's phone number. This is why a man will suggest that he and her go out on a date. This is why women will wait for men to make the first move and kiss them. Essentially, a woman wants to be able to see that you can be assertive when necessary. It doesn't mean that you have to be an overly assertive guy and be bossing a woman around or anything like that, but she wants to see that you have the trait of assertiveness, because not only is that important in the relationship with her, but she wants to see that you're going to be able to be assertive when necessary when interacting with other people, right? If you, for example, go to a restaurant with her and the waiter says for you and her to go over and sit in an area where there are a bunch of rowdy people making a lot of noise, and it's going to be uncomfortable for you and her on your first date or second date, and you just passively accept that and go over there, then she's going to be disappointed that you didn't assert yourself and say, oh, actually, those people over there seem to be making a lot of noise. I'd rather sit on a table over here. You got something over here? And speak to the waiter and assert yourself, and you don't need to be rude about it. It doesn't mean that a guy needs to say, hey man, I'm not sitting over there, those people are making noise, and being arrogant about it. Instead, he's just asserting himself. He's not being confrontational, but essentially she wants to be able to see that he's not going to be pushed around and be put into situations that are going to make him feel uncomfortable and her feel uncomfortable. That he's going to be able to stand up and be the man when it counts, but he doesn't need to be confrontational about it and get into an argument with the waiter or feel pissed off that the waiter is suggesting that they should go over and sit over there and get really angry about it. Instead, he just handles it with calm assertiveness and some tact, and he will then get a better table. And if the waiter says, no, you're going to have to sit over there with those rowdy people, then he's going to most likely say, well, all right, never mind, we'll go and eat somewhere else then. And he's going to assert himself in that way. He's not going to go and put himself in a situation where on a first or second date, for example, he wants to have a relaxing conversation with his date, and there are people making a whole bunch of noise and ruckus right next to him. He's just not going to put up with that. So they'll go somewhere else. And she'll be fine about that because he's making the right decision for them. He's asserting himself. He's not getting into an argument or being confrontational or anything like that. And if the waiter in a case like that said no, which they're usually not going to say, but if they said it, he could even say, if he really wanted to eat at that restaurant, to the waiter, well, okay, well, can you bring your manager over here and we'll have a chat about it and see what we can find out. And he'll take it from there. He'll talk to the manager and arrange something. But usually, if a waiter's doing that, which is going to be very unusual, he will then not want to get in trouble with his manager for being lazy and will then say, oh, well, actually, no, well, you guys can sit over there. And then he gets a better table, right? So he's asserting himself, he's handling the situation. And that's important for women because essentially a woman wants you to be her man. She wants to be your woman. She wants to be able to look up to you and respect you. Another trait that triggers attraction inside of women is what I call emotional independence, and the opposite of that being emotional dependence. Emotional dependence essentially means that a guy is needy. So his emotional state, how good he feels about himself, is dependent on how the woman is behaving. What sort of things she's saying to him. If she seems like she's interested in him. And if she is showing those signs, then he feels better about himself. Whereas a guy who is emotionally independent is going to feel good about himself regardless of how the woman is behaving. And in my case, for example, sometimes going out with some of my handsome friends, I would notice that women will be looking at them and finding them attractive. Women would come over and stand near our group and sometimes bump into them, hoping that one of my handsome friends will start a conversation with them. How's that going to make me feel? It's not happening to me. Women aren't looking at me across the room and thinking, oh, wow, who's that guy? They're just not having that reaction to me. I didn't let it get to me because I had discovered that you can make women feel attracted to your non-physical traits. And when they feel attracted to your non-physical traits, they look at your physical appearance in a more positive light. They actually find your physical appearance more appealing. And they literally look at you with your look. And I understand that some guys watching this video may be good looking, but for the guys who are average looking or below, they look at your physical appearance, they look at your look, and they find it sexier and more attractive. You have that look, but you're sexy. That's the way that they're looking at you. It's like he has that look and it's sexy. It works for him. It works for him because she's feeling attracted to his non-physical traits. And as a result, she's looking at his physical appearance in a more positive light. And what women say, and what I heard so many times over the years, is that they'll say, there's something about that guy. And women would say to me, sometimes when I'd ask them after we'd had sex and we're having a bit of a conversation, they would say things like, there was just something about you, right? There was something really sexy about you, something really appealing. Or in many cases, they would just struggle to really explain it because they can't really put their finger on it and explain it and say, oh, it's because you were assertive. It's because you were emotionally independent. It's because you know how to flirt. Right? They're not going to say those sort of things. They're just going to say, there's something about you that I really like. And they'll say things like that when they first saw you, they didn't look at you as being their type. But then when they started to talk to you, they realized that they really liked you. And what can happen from there is that you then become the woman's type or one of her types, right? She likes guys who look like that now because it seems like those guys can make her feel the type of way that she wants to feel. So another non-physical trait is self-respect versus being a pushover. And you can come up with many different opposites for self-respect, but essentially a guy who lacks self-respect is a guy who is going to be walked all over by a woman in terms of she can behave badly and he's going to be putting up with it. Or she can say rude things to him and he doesn't know how to make her respect him. Or he'll give an opinion on something and she'll say she has an opposite opinion and then he'll just throw out his opinion and say, yeah, actually, no, I don't really believe that, and then go for her opinion because he has no self-respect. He's willing to have no respect for himself and his opinions or who he is as a person and just try to mold himself and try to be the same as her or say things that he hopes will make her like him. And as a result, she sees that he has no self-respect. Right? He doesn't really respect himself as a man and he is willing to just do whatever to hopefully get a chance. And that's just, it's needy, it's weak, it's lacking a backbone and so on. Right? She sees that he has no self-respect. Another non-physical trait that triggers attraction inside of women is high status behavior. And the opposite trait that doesn't trigger attraction inside of women is low status behavior. An example of low status behavior is seeking approval. So seeking approval can mean that when a guy's talking to a woman and he says something, when he says something, he is essentially checking to see if she thinks it's cool now, if she's giving approval for what he's saying or what he's doing. He's seeking her approval for his behavior and what he's talking about. And another example of low status behavior is that he essentially sees the woman as being higher status than him or higher value than him. And he's coming from a lower status mindset where he thinks that she's just so much more amazing than him. And he would be so lucky if he could get a chance with her. And that's just not the feeling that a woman wants to get. Women want to feel like they're trading up with a guy in terms of social value and attractiveness value rather than trading down. And trading up doesn't mean that the guy has to be successful or anything like that. Instead, it's just how he thinks about himself and how that makes her feel. And as you may have experienced in your life, you may have come across some guys, for example, who haven't achieved anything in life or really aren't that special of a person, but they have a high status mindset. They're able to mingle in with the cool crowd. They're able to talk to attractive women and feel like they are good enough. They're not coming from a place where they think they're not good enough and they'll only be good enough if they go and achieve a whole bunch of stuff first and then come back and get the woman's approval. I'm losing my voice here, by the way, because I was just on a call with the members of my community and it went a little bit over time and I was doing a lot of talking there. If you haven't joined my community yet, then you're missing out big time. The guys in there are getting amazing results with women. I'll show you some of them here before we get on to the last trait. The guys who are applying the techniques that I teach in the video lessons are hooking up with women the first time that they meet them, even though they've never done it before. They're getting out of the friend zone with girls that they like. Some guys are sleeping with new women multiple days in a row. And recently a guy slept with 3 women in one day. And he was saying that it was exhausting sleeping with 3 women in one day. Because essentially when you get to the third woman, which I've only ever done once, by the way, but when you get to the third woman, you don't really have much fuel left, so to speak. But anyway, before I lose my voice, I'll talk about the last trait, and that is untamed energy versus tamed energy. So untamed energy obviously demonstrates a lot of emotional strength. In that, if a guy has tamed energy, what's going on is that he's been tamed by the reality around him, by what he's seen in the media, by what he's overheard people say, by the experiences that he's had with women, maybe some rejections or he's been dumped or something like that, and he's turned into a tamed guy, or maybe he's been a tamed guy all of his life. Yet a guy who has untamed energy, you'll be able to notice that yourself when you see a guy who's naturally good with women who has this trait. One way of saying it is that he just has a don't give an F type of energy. And it doesn't mean that he has to be reckless or rude or arrogant or treat people badly. Instead, he just doesn't give an F to the point where he's not concerned about what other people are thinking of him, to the point where he is untamed. He moves in a way where he is untamed. Rather than having tamed sort of movements where he's stiff and he's unsure, he's hesitant, he's overthinking things and so on. So I've given you 7 non-physical traits that attract women. But is that it? Is that all there is to it? There are only 7 traits that you can display? Absolutely not. In fact, I've identified 124 non-physical traits that you can display when you're interacting with a woman that trigger attraction inside of her. And that's what I teach in my Attraction Mastery video lesson series. Every month I teach you 2 new traits in detail, and I give you examples of what to say and do. And it gives you a chance to start applying those traits in your interactions with women and in your everyday life. And the thing is, most women are so easy to attract and get with that you can get results with the first 2 traits that you learn. For example, here's a post in the Share Your Wins area of the community where a guy joined 3 weeks prior to posting that, and he got with a woman that he felt overwhelmed by her beauty. He wasn't perfect at attracting her yet, but the mindset that I give in the confidence lesson is so powerful that it works right away and makes you feel confident around women that you find attractive, to the point where they feel attracted to you, and then you have the confidence to shoot your shot. Even though, as with this guy, you may feel a bit overwhelmed that a woman as attractive as her actually is feeling attracted to you and wants to be with you, but you still get the result anyway. And from there, every month I teach you 2 new traits, and I keep building that momentum for you in terms of confidence and attractiveness, and your results just get better and better. So if you're interested in being able to attract women rather than hoping that they're going to like you for your looks, or they're going to like you for some random reason where you get lucky, instead, if you want to actually have control over this area of your life, where if you see a woman that you find attractive, you can walk over and talk to her and make her feel attracted and get a result with her. And then from there, you can actually maintain her attraction in a relationship because you're displaying the sort of traits that are so important to women in terms of their attraction. Then check out Attraction Mastery. Alternatively, I'll see you in the next video here on YouTube.